Hello, this is Pete DiStefano from Untitled Technologies. I want to thank everyone for taking the time today to attend our webinar on 4.1 billion reasons to use chatbots for employee engagement. Again, I know there's a lot of things you could be doing, especially if it's lunchtime. You're spending the time with us, and Tiger really appreciates it. Our goal is to make this a session that adds value to you and to your day, and our best way to measure how successful we are is the interaction we get. So I really do encourage people to ask questions throughout the day. There's a Q&A function. Just fire off questions as you will, and we will probably wait till the end of the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions. I'm here today co-presenting with a colleague, Ritwik Bose. He's our Senior Director of Global Pre-Sales Consulting. Ritwik, welcome.
Thank you, Pete, and welcome everyone.
Okay, well, why don't we just get going here? Let me just do a quick sound check. We had some technical issues last week. How's everything sounding? Sounding good?
Perfect.
All right, awesome. Well, let's get going here. So the title of this presentation, 4.1 billion reasons to use chatbots. We talked a little bit about that in the description of the webinar. I'll get into that in a couple of moments. I did want to take a moment just to talk a little bit about who we are. In PRIYA Technologies, we've been around close to 14 years now, and we look at what we do as being an enabler in digital transformation. We help companies automate business processes, improve their engagement, whether it be with customers or employees. We'll talk a lot about that today, as well as helping them use real-time analytics to manage and make better decisions, data-based decisions, whether they're doing it from a mobile device, a tablet, or a desktop. We truly look at ourselves as an innovation partner, and I believe our customers would agree with that. We don't implement technology for the sake of technology. We look at solving business problems, leveraging the latest technology that's proven, and also looking to help companies find opportunities to enable new ways of doing things that they couldn't do before leveraging technology. I won't go into a lot of details. We've been around a while, as I mentioned. We've got multiple locations. We've done quite a few mobile and web portals. We're doing a lot of work now with artificial intelligence. We'll talk again a little bit about that today with regards to our topic. So I just wanted to give everyone a quick snapshot. Tiger does a full range from consulting and strategic services through the UX, design, development, maintenance support. We even have a testing service we do, not just for the solutions that we build, but for third-party solutions. So enough about us. Now let me get back into our title. So since we are talking about 4.1 billion reasons to use chatbots, I've got our first page agenda, and I've got our second page agenda. And okay, that was my attempt at humor. We're not going to do 4.1 billion reasons. Let's talk about the actual agenda. So first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about employee engagement challenges. And I would suggest that what we're going to talk about is global in nature, but a lot of the data I'm using to support what we talk about here are coming from the United States. But again, I would suggest what we talk about is a global issue, not just an issue in the United States. We're going to do some foundational grounding and, what is a chatbot and the technology, and we'll do that for a little bit. We'll also talk about how internal organizations, especially support organizations, can not only save money but improve service by partnering with a chatbot. How you leverage chatbots to automate and simplify business processes, we'll talk about that. And then we'll get into a little bit of education on, what is the process to building and deploying a chatbot? What are some of the options and what are some of the considerations? And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about a chatbot platform that we use at Untitled, that we've actually built in Untitled for our AI services. So I hope that's a good roundup of our agenda. I do believe it matches pretty close to what we said we would do in our abstract. So let's get going. Employee engagement challenges. It is an issue. As a matter of fact, if you're in HR, you're probably talking about it a lot. If you're an executive, if you're running a part of a business, even if you're managing a team, having your employees fully engaged has got to be an issue that you're dealing with. And just to share with you some statistics that are quite shocking. Number one, only 30% of employees say they're engaged in their job. More than 50% saying that they weren't engaged. 20% say they were actively disengaged. Well, what is that? Well, actively disengaged means that what they're doing is actually hurting your company as opposed to having no impact either way versus actually being engaged. And this came from one Gallup site, but there's been several studies, and they're all pretty consistent, that 25 to 35% of the workforce is engaged. Well, in baseball, if you guys know baseball, if you're batting 250 or 300, 350, that's awesome. You're an all-star. But as far as the employees that you hire, if only 30% of your workforce is engaged, that is a huge issue with regard to productivity, accomplishing goals, and really getting a company to perform as a company should based on the objectives that you might have. So what's causing these issues with engagement? And there's a variety of things. And some of it could be management. In this case, management had all the good intentions. I don't think their execution was well based on this Dilbert comic. But there are a variety of things, and we're going to talk about how some of those challenges can be mitigated. Why should you care? We talked about how small a percentage of people are engaged. Well, why does that matter? Well, when people aren't engaged, they leave. First of all, they're not as productive, and they're more likely to leave the company. And whether you're an HR or you're a manager, the cost of recruiting and then re-onboarding and training, and people, you all know how long it takes to get someone to the point where they're fully productive in what you're looking for them to do. It's costing this country billions of dollars. Increasing employee engagement on the flip side, let's be positive, just by 10% can have an impact on profit as much as $2,400 per employee or worker. And the bottom line is engaged employees provide higher service, resulting in higher customer satisfaction, which results in increased sales and profits. So there is a direct impact, not just is it the right thing to do because you want your employees to be fulfilled, job satisfaction, but it's good business for that to happen. So things have changed, employees have changed. You have a whole new generation, you actually have a couple of newer generations of workers and employees. Immediacy is one reason that these artificial intelligence chatbots are being deployed. And I know there's probably, we all talk about millennials and we probably overdo it, but the reality is millennials, based on the way they've grown up and the way they use technology and the way the world is today, they expect immediacy. They expect an answer right away. And I'm guilty of this as well. I think we've all become part of a society that's expecting things quickly, expecting answers, but it's not just expecting quick answers. It's expecting answers quickly, accurately, and when you want the answers, not on someone else's schedule. What's technology's role in all this? Well, I mean, there's a negative side. If technology is antiquated, it can have an impact. If the technology is new, it can have a positive impact based on not just Generation Z and the millennials. I thought this was kind of a cute little cartoon I thought I'd throw in there. The technology, and we're going to talk about that quite a bit today, can really have a positive impact on employee engagement, and we're going to talk about that in one area today, and that's with chatbots. So why do we think that makes a difference? Again, I'm going to talk to millennials here. These are people that grew up being the chief technology officer in their home. Okay, that's very different. I mean, we all joke around about how, our kids have more technical savvy. They grew up, from the moment they could walk with technology in their hands. Well, that has an impact on when they've gone to school and to college and then entered the workforce. And even one of the surveys you see here, millennials will call out that state-of-the-art technology is something they look at when they're considering to go to work someplace. a quote from Zach Holmquist talks about mobility. And forget about millennials, don't blame it on them, but mobility is such a driver of disruption. Well, the reason we'll talk a little bit about mobility is that there is a tight connection to mobility and things like chatbot. So just to kind of give you a little more context, this is some information from Gartner Group. For those of you who might not be aware, Gartner is a very well-respected analyst and research organization. They talk about chatbots essentially being the apps of voice and messaging platforms, defining how people converse with your digital business services and data. And we're going to talk a little more about what makes up a chatbot. But why is the chatbot appealing? Its efficiency, its ease of interaction, regardless whether it's customers, employees, and the benefits are amazing, and that's why they've grown so fast. And Rick's going to talk about that in a few moments. But he goes on to say that chatbots need to be included in mobile app strategies to get ahead of a trend, or it will disrupt patterns of employee interaction, especially as the new digital workplace comes into play for employees down the road. So Gartner goes on to say, and a lot of people are using this quote, and I can see why it's kind of interesting. It's saying that by 2020, just a couple years from now, the average person will have more conversations with bots than their spouse. And I don't know about your household, so this could be a good thing or a bad thing. I'll let you guys choose. But it is kind of interesting to think about how much this has all grown. Well, why has this happened? What are people looking for? Riva, can you help us out here?
Absolutely, Pete, and thank you so much. So as we see today, I mean, the level of conversation starting from phones, social media, email to chat has increasing day by day. I mean, this is a quick survey done by eDigital's benchmark survey, and they mentioned that over 73% of people would rather prefer to chat, which is quite staggering to know. And as we proceed, we see that there are a rise of applications that are coming up, which are chat-based applications. Now, they can be consumer-facing chat or even chat within an enterprise, and that's kind of like what we are talking today. Mostly is how employees can engage through an intelligent chat system. So you could potentially look at a bot as a co-worker. And as you see over here, 2018, we are looking at about 1.5 billion applications, which are chat-based applications that could run within an enterprise or even for your consumers. So why are chatbots so important? I mean, in the last couple of years, in just 1 year, Facebook itself disclosed that they have close to about 45,000 bots in their Facebook platform. And some of these bots are for brands to drive consumers. Some of the bots are for consumers who are including their social social logins to communicate with the brand, or it could be even internal applications for the employees to work through a Facebook for business kind of a platform. But if you look at these stats, we are seeing that there is a rise of messaging being one of the mode of communication, which could be whether voice-based messaging or it could be just your textual input messaging, but there is definitely a significant rise in chatbots. So now, where do we see chatbots more often? We do see chatbots for mostly consumer side of it, where consumers can get information about their accounts, an order update, or it could be specifically towards the product that they purchase. But when we look at employees can see it from a various perspective, whether it is HR-related questions, IT-related services, or whether it is for the internal sales and marketing team or for the accounting team. But there are two competing forces that impact the world of HR, because that's probably the closest association an employee would have with an organization, which is the HR system. So on one hand, the rate of social and business change is accelerating. I mean, everyone is kind of like looking at more information. The socio-economic environment within an enterprise is also kind of like impacting a lot. So these are some of the trends that we are seeing from an employee standpoint, and we are trying to strike this balance, for leading HR practitioners that can leverage emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence or through a chatbot or machine learning that can support these rapid business changes within an enterprise. Some of the things I'm going to touch base, but today we will be primarily focusing on how chatbot for an employee can improve. I mean, this is basically a platform for the employees to interact, whether it is from reporting, reporting their day-to-day activities, or whether they're understanding the policies of the organization, or even interacting with basic, updates like what's my leave balance, who should I contact if there is any kind of, standard procedure, standard of operating procedures that needs to be followed. So all of that can be factored in, and there are certain enterprises which are taking these analytics to understand employees better in terms of who are better in terms of performance or in terms of their overall emotional health within the organization. So we look at what is an AI chatbot. Now, from a layman's language, right, a chatbot basically is nothing but it is an artificially intelligent system that can process whatever information that a person is typing or voicing out, and based on that understanding of that language, it provides a conversation kind of a scenario. And chatbots are deployed either within the within your company, or it could be for the consumer, whether it is on Facebook or Skype or the likes, or a mobile application. So we'll talk a little bit about employee engagement chatbots, and we'll touch on why they are so important.
Okay, so I'm going to go into some use cases, but before I do that, one thing is common regardless of whether it's for employees, whether it's for sales and marketing, whether it's customer service. Chatbot is available all the time. They don't get tired. They're computer programs. They don't have emotional breakdowns. They don't have the impact of the toll that it takes on a person if they're constantly being beat up or abused or just having a tough time dealing with human beings. We use the example of Alexa. If you've got any experience with using Alexa or the Google Go, no matter what you do, they're always pleasant. And from a business perspective, they're easy to scale up or down if needed. So these are things to keep in mind that cross all of the use cases. But let's drill down a little bit more into the employee engagement. First of all, there is an opportunity to save significant money. Right now, they're talking about $20 million a year globally, and they believe just by the year 2022, which is not very far from now, like 4 years from now, the business costs that could be trimmed down as much as $8 billion. Now, the cost reduction is cool, don't get me wrong, and that can help with the ROI, but the improvement in service makes that a double bonus, and we'll talk about that as we go through. So let's just take some examples, like reducing operational costs. Chatbots being used for self-service portals, internal self-service, help employees quickly get information, get answers to simple queries. Lower labor costs. Most internal organizations, the support costs, although there are other costs, 65 to 70% of the cost is related to staffing. So there's an opportunity there. And whether it's reducing that cost or shifting that resource into more high-value areas. Chatbot ROI, it goes beyond just the dollars and cents, but this does result into actual measurable results, and that's having happier employees. And even the most experienced support person, again, it takes a toll when they get paid. They have to answer the same question over and over and over again. If you can remove that 80% of the work, which is those repetitive questions, and have those employees focus on the 20% that are more involved, more high-value conversations, not only can they spend more time doing it and doing it well to satisfy whatever the employee needs are, whatever the process is, again, you're reducing the overall cost. And then the other thing is shifts, right? I mean, a lot of times, a lot of internal communications or processes we'll get into in a moment, they have to be on a schedule. Well, with a chatbot, it might free you up to make some of those internal support services available 24 hours, 7 days a week without taking a huge hit from an expense perspective. So let's take a couple of things. I'm going to talk to the HR folks in the audience right now, and that is, there was a survey conducted by the Society of Human Resources, and there's a lot of things HR folks are worried about, but 38% of them clearly said maintaining high levels of employee engagement, and that's obvious. I showed you the statistics earlier, so this is not a surprise. Part of the problem that these people called out was their self-service portals are antiquated, and employees, because they're not using those older systems, they are not solving the problem, they're getting on the phone and they're directly calling HR, so they're rising the number of HR requests that are having to be answered, and these are things that could be answered by a chatbot. And as you can see on the bottom, if the chatbot's solving that problem, okay, then the result is you're improving engagement, and at the same time, you're decreasing the amount of time an HR rep has to spend on the phone answering these requests. So it's a win-win. Let's talk about corporate training. The chatbot can be used for all sorts of training: sales training, software training, business training, etc. Repetition's key in training, and chatbots can use to conduct quizzes, check the progress. It could time when certain training is launched to specific employees. You could track the goals of an employee. So the chatbot can grant employees a feature. They can track it. They can see how they are doing against company objectives. Let's talk a little more about training and onboarding. So it's a brand new employee. Okay, you can greatly simplify a lot of the processes, including things like when someone's onboarded and there's specific paperwork that they have to fill out. I've onboarded in several companies. Years ago, I remember it was a week-long process. And then companies have shortened that. Maybe it's a day or half a day. And then some companies haven't done that much at all, and they say, hey, go read some stuff. Well, with a chatbot, not only can you have the freedom of time, so an employee can do a lot of the onboarding on their own time or wherever they are, if they're in the field versus having to come into a formal office, but you can also kind of time the types of onboarding, and then you can do evaluation. So there's lots of flexibility that you can use for a chatbot. And again, much of the onboarding, depending on your company, is repetitive, so you can leverage a chatbot to do that. As I mentioned about paperwork, tax forms, when people come on board, a chatbot can take them through all that. There's also all sorts of opportunities that, when new hires have to sign certain paperwork, a lot of those processes can be automated. I'm going to share some examples with you in a moment that talk about ways to use chatbots for recruiting before they become employees. Here's an example on the left where you can help with some refresher quizzes, or if it's a new employee, hey, what do I do if I go into a work area and they're not wearing a hard hat? I mean, these are simple questions, but, well, here's your choice. Remind them to wear it, give them your hard hat, etc. So there's lots you can do here without, again, having to have a human being involved. And again, doing a better job on behalf of the employee and minimizing the resources. So first I'm going to share some examples of chatbots that are out there for some big companies. Intel has a virtual HR agent called Ivy, answers employee questions, has over 4,000 responses to different questions. Of course, Intel's a huge company, but you can imagine how much Ivy is being of assistance to the HR team. And by the way, with any kind of chatbot, don't think of it as a replacement. Think of it as an assistant or as a partner to an organization, whether it's internal to HR, to IT, whether it's external for sales and marketing or customer service. Think of it as a partner. Overstock interacts with 450 call center employees. Now, this is kind of interesting. They use it to check their schedules, their time off, inform managers about unplanned leave or sick days. I'm going to show a little bit of that in one of our examples later. But another thing that companies are doing, when you think of customer service, you think, oh, there could be a chatbot that's answering questions for customers. We've seen examples where call centers have their own chatbot so they can get some answers quickly before talking to a customer. So that's kind of another unique use case, different use case. The next one is a recruitment chatbot. There's a couple of them here. Maya is that same way, where it can evaluate applicants, aggregate data, do some pre-screening, provide information, and then present the recruiter with a handful of candidates ranked on a set of metrics. Stella helps in the recruiting, finding employees, helping job seekers engage with them, answering some questions, and then getting that to a point. So again, some of the stuff is pre-employee, but these can all be very helpful tools, and these are all in place and have been functioning for quite some time. So let me just show you a couple of quick examples of some chatbots. This one I'm going to talk to. This just shows you an example that chatbots are deployable on a website, as you see here. They're deployable on a native mobile phone or a tablet. They're deployable through messaging services, so you can have a chatbot in Facebook Messenger or Slack or any one of a myriad of messaging apps. What I'm going to show you here, this is a, give me a second here. This is a example of what's called an HR assistant. I'm not doing this live, so I'm just kind of taking you through the process. But here's an example where I want to send somebody my business card. So I'm clicking here on business card, and it knows who RKM is, so it's pulling up that card, and now I've got the capability to email that or shoot that person a call. The next thing is I want to know what my tasks are, so I'm going to reach out, and it's going to go and look at my calendar, and it's going to say what I have for this date. I've got to create bot templates. Now I want to know how much vacation I have available, so again, I type in, I'd like to know what my leave balance is, and it comes back, and well, what type of leave? And I'm saying, I'm going to click on my permanent leave. Okay, because I have 20 days, and I want to take a day off, so I'm going to apply for leave. I'm going to say, well, I want it to be, that's casual, right, because I'm just taking a day off. Okay, yes, I'm in a good mood, and it pulls up a calendar. So I say, well, you know what, I'm just taking off one day on January 26th, so my start and end is the 26th. Okay, and when I'm done, it says, okay, you've applied for 1 day leave. Okay. Next step is I need to get my insurance number. So it's calling up all these people. Well, you know, I'm Anna, so I'm picking on the second one, and it's coming up and it's pulling up my Blue Cross card. So this is just kind of showing you some examples of different things you can do. Let me know if you need anything else. I say, well, you know what are my last 3 months of pay stubs? So I go in, I could look at my September pay stub. So all of this is stuff I've got, you know, available to me. So let me step out of that. There's just to kind of give you a quick example of that one. Let me go back into our presentation. This I'm going to show you is a live chatbot. So sales dialers, this is a platform where salespeople use it to do auto dialing and set up appointments and manage contacts. So I'm going to go in here, okay, and I'm logged in. It's a test account, but I'm logged in here to sales dialers, and I'm going to click here on this little plus sign and the purple chatbot icon. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to do is say, well, what's your name? Hey there, I'm SD, the bot for sales dialers, trying to answer your questions. Okay, that's great. Well, good afternoon. Right, so you know, he comes back, great. So, you know, like, how do I transfer a call? Because it's a dialing service. And sure enough, it pops up an example of a video, and I won't go through that.
Closer account, as we would call it.
So it goes through and educates me on how to transfer a call, right? Another thing I could say is, what is drip mail? Okay, and then it shows me other videos. So the other thing I do is, okay, again, with a dialer, what are my soft settings? So I can look at my phone number and the information. I can change my profile. So again, this is an assistant, a chatbot that is engaged, and this has actually been integrated into this application to where, as I'm using sales dialers, I have a chatbot available to me. I don't have to go to help. I don't have to go to a document. I don't have to call someone. I have a chatbot right here that I can use to help me do my work. All right, sorry. And what I want to do now is I'm going to pass this back over to Ritwik, and he's going to kind of do a little more of we're going to dive a little bit deeper into how chatbots work and the process.
Thank you, Pete. So the way chatbots work, it's typically, if you look at it, it is another chat platform, but there is a quotient of intelligence inside it. So we start with the first layer, which is how the text or how the chat is initiated, whether it is text-based or whether it is voice-based. And then comes the AI part of it, which is how the chat is interpreted by the system and how that particular interpretation is then based on certain logic, on certain transition of the question and answer scenario, it is provided back to the user in a way that the user understands it. So at any given point of time, we have to look at it from a natural language understanding perspective, which means that it need not be specific to how you should interact. It can be as colloquial in a way. And it can be, the responses can be text-based, it can be certain task or app interfaces, or it could be as simplified as a GIF or a video image. Okay, so the way the entire architecture is, and this is just to simplify that, the bot basically resides in your environment. So and it can understand natural language, as I mentioned earlier. It could understand speech, typical FAQs and question patterns. It can also empathize as well as understand the person's emotion at that point of time. So there are different ways the chatbots can integrate. And if you have existing systems, it can basically pull information from your existing systems and can be deployed anywhere, which could be your website, it could be your own homegrown mobile application, or it can be Facebook, any platform. So that's how simplified the entire architecture is. Now, the engine, which is basically the AI part of it, is kind of comes with the entire platform, which means that is the entire engine will start understanding who the user is and what kind of response will be best suited for the question that comes in. So when we start planning a chatbot platform, now there are certain things that we need to understand, which is why chatbot is relevant. Now there are ways to create this entire environment, but in extension of how a chatbot is considered, you need to start small, which is basically understand the most asked use cases from an employee standpoint. And it also kind of like goes into how we train the chatbot, because the chatbot, again, is a co-worker. You have to look at the chatbot as a co-worker. So they need to understand, we need to ensure that they're able to interpret the questions and give answers. And then particularly, we need to understand how the employees interact. Now, chatbots sometimes are not effective when there are when there are too many languages in place. So if you have like a global team, you need to understand where the chatbot would work best and can train the chatbot from a language perspective, from a vernacular perspective. And we need to keep ensuring that the chatbot is always tested with different type of questions so that it can learn the different patterns that it might expect. And of course, finally comes the metrics. Now, how do we measure chatbots? Now, every chat session, there are two outputs to that session. Either you're, as a person, you are happy with the conversation, or as a person, you're not happy with the conversation. Now, these are the two output of the chatbot scenario. But at any given point of time, we need to understand how users are interacting, the number of users who are interacting with the bot. How long are they interacting with the bot, whether they're able to get the right information. There are certain chatbots which fail by asking the repetitive same question, though the user is kind of like trying to get answer to a specific type of question. If there are any click-through scenarios, which means the scenario that Pete showed as an example, where I need to book a leave for a particular date. If that click is not working, then your chatbot is failing. So these scenarios will basically help you understand that whether your bot initiative was perfect. you also need to look at who are the active members in the organization. Today, with Gen Z and millennials, which is mostly the digital workforce, they kind of like try to stay active in messaging platforms. So this is very critical when it comes to understanding whether your chatbot is up to the mark. We also need to kind of like understand that, how to avoid any kind of confusion. So there are certain times when the chatbot might not be able to understand a particular question. So at that given point of time, should a live person interact with the employee, or should the bots kind of like come back to the employee at a later given point of time to answer that question? So all of these involves certain amount of activities which basically allows the bot to understand whether they are able to convert any kind of query into a happy ending. I mean, as I started, there are two endings, whether it's a happy ending or a sad ending. So we need to kind of like ensure that the conversions are closed. So the strategy by itself is very simplified. We need to start understanding how do we onboard your chatbot into your network. Now, these natural language processing and all of that, they need to understand, we need to first of all understand what are the pain that the chatbot is going to solve, and where are the human interactions happening, or what were the initial human interactions that we are trying to solve. So today, if the interaction is mostly towards email, towards going to the HR person, interacting with the HR person, understanding, and then followed up with an email with certain information, we are looking at those specific type of touch points. Then we need to understand what are the systems and network topology which is out there. I mean, if there are any CRM system or an applicant tracking system that you're using for recruitment, or whether it is any kind of payroll systems that you're using, how easy it is to integrate so that the chatbot can go back to those systems, pull the relevant information, and push that to the employee. It also goes with the priorities and how important those priorities are. But in essence, whether we should build a chatbot, whether we should buy a chatbot. Today, there are close to roughly about 50,000 different type of chatbot platforms and tools which are out there. But it squarely boils down to which is the right solution for the company, and whether you would want to have the chatbot as more of a boxed versus unboxed. Now, what is boxed? Boxed is a typical FAQ that you would see on your website. These are the questions, these are the answers. But why it should be on a chatbot environment? Now, certain times, a person's interpretation of a question can vary. I mean, I can ask the question in 5 different ways for a simple question like, what is your name? How can you be called? How are you known with? So these are different scenarios where you can have the boxed environment, where you can have simplified answers to any of these variations of questions. The unboxed is when the AI part starts kicking in, which means that any kind of question that has been asked, the AI also understands who that person is, I mean, who that employee is, whether that employee is, for instance, if she's inquiring about any specific type of lead, or if a person is inquiring about a specific type of leave, whether it is sick leave, maternity, paternity, or whatever it may be. So those kind of questions can be asked. Now, when it comes to within an enterprise, which is employee-related information, we also need to understand the security. I mean, whether any kind of secure document has been exchanged, any training information, any scorecard-related information has been exchanged through the chatbot interface. So security plays a crucial role. And finally, it comes to the metrics which I talked about. Avoid any kind of confusion that can come, and ensuring that you give certain room to the chatbot to learn more. I mean, consider it as a baby who's learning as fast as he can, and trying to adapt to your enterprise environment. So we'll talk a little bit about PRIYA, which is our chatbot platform. And this platform basically helps you to create bots and manage those bots in the long run. Now, whether that bot is for your consumers or whether that bot is for your employees, and whether you have different type of bots that can be addressed for specific type of scenarios, whether you want the bot only to address HR-related queries, or whether you want the bot to answer any queries related to accounting or order-related information. That can be solved with PRIYA. Now, the way PRIYA works is basically there are certain components to the entire platform, and it is a low-code or a no-code environment, which means that you can manage the entire bot platform just by certain click of button. And it's kind of like is very flexible. It helps you understand how exactly the flow needs to be, but the bot by itself will have certain cognitive kind of services, which is the natural language processing, understanding what the user is asking, whether it is voice-based or text-based. It can understand all of that, and how exactly you want the entire bot to, or where exactly you want the bot to reside, whether it should be on your intranet. If the organization is running a sophisticated intranet, we can as well have the bot on the intranet. Whether it is on a mobile application that the employees are frequently using, you can have it on the mobile application. Whether it is Skype for business or Facebook for business or any other platform, you can practically have the bot deployed there. So a quick representation, what you see on the screen is typically the way our entire platform is structured. It is a drag and drop kind of a functionality, so you can create your own workflows. So for instance, today you have a question that where I can submit my leave. Now there could be potentially two responses, response A and response B. And you can define what should be the output for response A and what should be the output for response B. And if there is further systems that needs to come in place, like for instance, for the leave, the chatbot needs to go back to the payroll system or the leave management system or the leave tracking system and pull the information about that particular relevant employee, then it has to talk to those systems. And that is how easy it is for you to create the entire bot for your enterprise.
Okay, thank you, Ritwik. We've got a few more things to talk about here, and then I'm going to get to questions. We've already got, looks like we've got 5 or 6 questions. So let me finish with these last couple of slides. I kind of want to summarize what we've talked about, and as a high-level summary, companies using chatbots as a tool to attract new generation employees, but it literally can be a tool that can satisfy any generation. Instant communications, available 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's an opportunity to engage with new technology, which is definitely something that a newer generation loves. They love to converse, so it really does help with a new generation of employees, but I think it can be as beneficial to any generation. Again, I don't want to just talk about reducing costs. And to me, chatbot, the ROI can be very simple, whether it's a combination of reduced costs and improved service. But reducing turnover, reducing the cost to educate, increasing engagement, getting your employees, there's a lot of discussion about not just making them aware of what's going on in the company, answering their questions, but having them feel truly like they're empowered and people care about what they say and their ideas. That comic from Dilbert earlier on where, it was you're empowered and I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. Well, this gives some freedom and some capability for employees really to engage in a way that they want to engage. So lots of opportunity there. I want to give everyone a little bit of homework, and then we'll get to your questions. The first thing I ask you to do is we're going to be sending the slide deck out and this recording. Hopefully this slide deck might help you. Try to identify a short list, if you will, 5 or 6 of potential internal chatbot candidates. I strongly suggest that you then try to put value to each one of those, whether it be the impact it has on your employees, the complexity of what you're trying to do, and the end result would be that you can easily choose your first example. In Piger, we always stress this with our customers that, you want to crawl, then you want to walk, then you want to jog, then you want to run. So I would suggest that if you do pick one project, then pick a segment of your employees, don't pick the whole company, and pilot it and get some experience. Chatbots are amazing, but they're kind of like a child in the sense that they need care and loving, and they're going to make some mistakes, and you're going to make them better. And hopefully you choose an environment and a platform that makes it easy to do that. So I do encourage you, if there's one thing you do, is spend a little time, and you probably, a lot of you might have already done that, to say, okay, here might be some of the short list, but really take that, do that evaluation, come up with your top candidate, and then put a small project in place. All right, I am going to get to the questions. By the way, for everyone who is in this webinar, if you would like to spend some time with Employer, either helping you identify some candidates or helping you evaluate candidates or answering additional questions, we will provide a free consulting session. So, please feel free to take advantage of that. You can email us or call us. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. But let's kind of get to some of the questions. So I'm going to handle the first one. This question is, do employees have issues engaging with a chatbot? And I'm going to answer this question for employees as well as customers. What we have found, and a lot of people have written about this. Well, first of all, and you heard it from Ritwik, today's newer generation of employees love to chat, okay, and they want to engage through chat. Are they okay chatting with a software program? The answer is, for the most part, absolutely, as long as they know that that is what they are engaging with. I don't know if you noticed when I was doing the demonstration on sales dialers, and there was a couple other demos I was going to do, where the first thing that happens when the chatbot's engaged is the chatbot says, hi, my name is Bonnie. I'm your digital assistant to help answer your questions. As long as people are aware that they're talking to a computer, they're okay with it, especially if they're getting the right information, they're getting it quickly. It's when people try to pass off a chatbot as a human being where there's trouble. All right, I'm going to pass this one to you, Rick. How do chatbots work with existing systems?
Right. So I think I addressed this, that one of the key or general principle is an enterprise chatbot architecture should support a seamless integration between your business data and different systems like your CRM system, your ERP, or your payroll or leave management systems. But out of all of these different systems which are out there, everything is connected through an API, which is primarily the chatbot services can securely connect with your business system via an API and pull the information. It is sometimes I can completely understand that it can be overwhelming to fully evaluate your options to ensure that you select the right kind of a chatbot platform for your specific needs. But that is where Employer comes in, where we understand the complexities of building a chatbot, and that's why we have built this platform, which is easy for you to understand which are the different business systems and resources that you already have in place, and it can just connect to those systems via an API and pull the information for the chatbot to give the right answer to the employees.
All right, great, thanks, great answer. Okay, the next question here is, how long does it take to build a typical chatbot? I'll chime in on this one, and then Ritwik, feel free if you want. So I'll start it with it depends, but one of the it depends is, are you using a platform as opposed to building it from scratch? And I'll give you an example from an Employer perspective using the PRIYA.AI platform. If you're building something called an FAQ chatbot, which is a boxed chatbot, which is really basically using the chatbot to answer questions that are frequently asked instead of providing a document, right? So that's pretty straightforward. The building of the chatbot, it's not as much as the technology as identifying what the objective is and understanding what are the types of questions you want to be able to field and getting those responses. You can build from the beginning through the requirements to creating it, inputting into the platform, doing the testing. A very simple FAQ, you could be up and running in 5 to 6 weeks. Now, you saw that one chatbot that Intel had that had 4,000 responses. And then if you start doing more with the unboxed and more of the learning, again, a chatbot gets better over time as well. So, a lot of the ones we've been doing are typically in the 8-week, would you say, roughly 8-week time period, but some are more complicated than others. So I hope that answers the question. Ritwik, this one's for you. How can you evaluate the impact of an employee-facing chatbot?
That's a great question. So when we look at employee, we have to look at employee as a human, and businesses have long recognized the importance of delivering a memorable response to their customers, but at the same time to their employees. And today, millennials and Gen Z, they are the largest shareholder of the global workforce, and more organizations are applying the same mindset that they have applied to their customers to employees. Now, how do we keep them focused or make them use chatbots? So the central is understanding employees what meaning or value or connection or recognition that they would get out of the chatbot. They expect work to to give kind of like similar experience that they would expect from a web tool or an application that they're using within an enterprise. And what we have seen is certain kind of promotional, and as Peter mentioned earlier, there are referral quizzes and all of these different engagement or tactics can elevate that experience of using chatbot, because it comes with an intuitive interface. It's a chat interface. You get quick responses, and everything is real time. At the end of the day, how real time the information can be is the most significant part.
All right, and there's one more question I will take, and then I might pass it on to Ritwik. So this question is there a benefit of having one chatbot for internal or multiple? And that's actually a good question, and it really is based on strategy. So you could have one chatbot that takes care of all your internal services. Matter of fact, you could have a single chatbot that, if some of the answers or the questions would require the person authenticate themselves, like, for example, if you're trying to get information about vacation or your insurance benefits, and then some of the questions and responses don't require authentication. So it's really based on your strategy. A lot of people talk about giving a chatbot a personality. So the IT guys might want to give it a different personality than, say, HR versus another group. So from a cost, from a performance perspective, that could all be managed. So it really is up to you to decide how you would want to break that up and deploy those chatbots. Okay, I think that's what we've got. Let me just check if there's any more questions. I think we've answered everything. Well, first of all, Ritwik, thank you. Great information.
Thank you.
And I want to thank those. I know there's some people on here who were not able to attend the original one where we were having audio difficulties, and I see a couple of people from that first event. So thank you for spending time with us again, and I'm glad we were able to get some additional people. As mentioned, we will send everyone the slide deck. We'll send you the recording if you want to listen to our wonderful voices again. But for those of you going through this the second time, I think you've had enough pain to deal with. But seriously speaking, we do appreciate your time. Any questions you have at all about chatbots, artificial intelligence, whether it be internal or external use, feel free to contact us. We're more than happy to help you there. Well, again, thank you very much, and thank you everyone else, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Take care.